Hi, folks, and welcome to another evening session. Today we have two guests diving in from the US. That's one of the reasons we are holding this a bit late, but still, I think everyone is still up, so it's not an issue. And there are plenty of reasons to stay around because we're going to discuss a niche of literature which is not very well known, but I think people should be in touch with because it's not that spread, but I think it's of people's interest if you are into something that is say unusual or it's confronting the mainstream. So stay around because I think it's very interesting, especially if you've been following my writing sessions, which I think they have been more and more frequent over the last couple of months. So that's what we have for the next hour or so. And for that topic, I have two guests. I have Paige Johnson, and I have Sebastian Weiss. Sebastian, unfortunately, he is not able to switch on the camera, but he will join us on audio, no problem. We are here for the dialogue more than anything else. So they are both responsible for the publishing house Outcast Press, and they also are authors themselves. So it will be good to understand how they approach this environment from different angles on how much do they emerge. So if you are into this topic, stay around. If you enjoy the conversation, award us a thumbs up. If you are in touch with someone who hasn't been told about what you do here, it would be great if you can share. And there's also another button below that I'm very happy if you could press, which is the subscribe button. So since you are new to this podcast page, first I'd like to welcome you, of course, and thank you for the availability. I would like just to ask you for you to introduce yourselves to the audience. Maybe I start with you, Paige.
Okay, thank you for having me. I'm the editor-in-chief of Outcast Press, so every book we have, I edit within it, and a lot of times I do the art inside, that formatting and all of that. And I don't always pick the stories that go in here, but for our latest book we did, it's called Slut Vomit, an anthology of sex work. This is the second one. So me and Sebastian started this together about 3 years ago. We specialize in transgressive fiction, which I didn't even know what it was until I met him. I used to always say that I read so much, but I like so little, because I didn't know what genre I really liked. And then through Sebastian, I discovered it was transgressive fiction. And that's why we named our press Outcast Press, because it's kind of an easier way to describe what transgressive means.
Thank you, Paige. Sebastian, would you mind introduce yourself to the public, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm Sebastian Weiss. I am the co-owner of Outcast Press. And to just echo something that Paige said, most people, I would say most people are familiar with transgressive fiction. They just don't have a name for it. Everybody knows Fight Club. That's transgressive fiction. Everybody knows American Psycho. That's transgressive fiction. Everybody knows Lolita. That's transgressive fiction. But it's not, how do I put it? Everybody that I've talked to who writes or reads transgressive fiction, they don't know what they're writing, right? It's like, well, I'm not writing science fiction per se. I'm not writing noir per se. I'm not writing literary per se. What the fuck am I writing? And it's like a watershed moment of like, oh, this is what I'm writing, or this is what I'm reading, right? And so it's kind of underground, kind of, but not really. And part of that, I think, is due to the themes. the writing style and the fact of it takes a kind of special person, because if you're reading or writing a transgressive fiction story, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's going to get under your skin in a way that other stuff won't, right? It's going to deal with topics in a way that other genres won't. And so, yeah, you have to be somebody who, if you're reading it, is there for the experience of seeing something from a kind of twisted point of view. And I don't know if I would say enjoy is the right word, but you get something out of it, you know? So yeah, Paige does, I will say Paige is like one of the best editors out there. If I can relay a story about you, Paige, I remember we met on this other site where we were doing critiques, and I remember she went through one of my pieces and just made a ton of comments, just an astronomical amount of comments and editorial suggestions that made the piece like 1,000 times better. And I'm like, whoa. And I thought, this is back in maybe 2018, 19. I'm like, if I ever start a press, I know who I want. And I think all of our authors would agree that, I mean, she's made my pieces better. She's made all of their pieces. I don't think we've got one author who's unsatisfied with the editorial work and the layout. Her knack for doing book layout is phenomenal. And yeah, that's, I guess, what I have to say about that.
Paige, now that you are on the spot, let me just ask you this. What made you decide to own Outcast Press and edit for a press of this nature?
I didn't know that it was even a possibility or something I ever really thought about, but since we knew each other through the critique site, for, I would say, at least a year, we were already friends and doing it for each other. And for fun, I would always read people's stuff and critique it. So then I thought, when Sebastian proposed the idea and wanted me to be editor, I was like, well, I'm already doing it for free. I'm already doing it for fun. And then it would be a more concentrated thing of work that obviously I would better like to edit, because we'd be choosing what to focus on, the genre and everything.
And let's say when you open a manuscript, let's say I submit a novel or poetry book or a theater piece, and you read 2-3 pages. Can you feel love or hate at first 2-3 pages?
It doesn't. If it just, sorry, it's kind of cutting out for me, but if it doesn't grab me, and when you know how they say literary agents get all these submissions and they like it or not, especially with transgressive fiction, we really want it to grab you. We really want to hook, usually starting in the middle or with some almost kind of shocking or interesting or just a different thought process, because then it's emblematic of what's to come. And, you know, nowadays it's so hard to grab the reader's attention, so you want to grab them by the throat immediately and kind of not let off.
So you think first impressions matter? Let's in a scale from 1 to 10. How much first impressions have an impact in the final evaluation?
Very heavy, like at least 80%.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and even just the way of how do I put it? Like, we can, like, obviously everything needs, everybody needs an editor, right? But we can, and I think anybody in this profession can tell you, you can tell, within those first few pages, first few chapters, you're like, all right, this has legs, now obviously nobody can predict how successful a book can be, right? That's just, anybody who tells you differently is selling you snake oil. But we can at least go, okay, this person has the chops. They know how to construct a sentence in an interesting way. They know how to do characterization in an interesting way. They can do, and especially if they've got like a unique voice, right? If I read a Paige if you were to put a Paige Johnson story down in front of me and take her name off, I would know very quickly that it was hers because of her style. I would like to think I'm the same way. And so if we can see like a voice that is very distinct to that individual, that goes a long way. But what also goes a long way is just how do I say it? How we get a feel for if they're willing to take editorial advice, editorial suggestions. Because if you're not, we can't work with you. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to make the work better, right? And Paige is phenomenal at, here's the mark of a good editor. The mark of a good editor is not trying to impose your vision on somebody's work, what you think the story should be, is trying to enhance and draw out what is already good in that and tap into that and make that better. And if the person's not receptive to that, then we can't work with them. So yeah, that's, I guess, my 2 cents, as it were.
Also, because when an author sends you their work, the first few pages is probably what they've been working on the most, because they know that's what everyone's seeing, and they probably reread their own script a million times. So you really want the first few pages to pop.
But it's also, how do I say it? It's also how something is pitched too, right? I remember. So Paige, do you remember when we took on Nevada? How she pitched hers? I'll never forget it. When she pitched it to me, I remember back in the beginning, she said, "Listen, I've got this book series, and it's Breaking Bad meets Desperate Housewives." And I'm like, "Oh, that's fucking cool, right? That's a good pairing, because you've got the grittiness of Breaking Bad, but then you've also got the kind of soap opera drama of Desperate Housewives,
or the slight humor."
Yeah, so I'm like, that's an interesting mashup, right? Like, that's an interesting, and yeah, and so it's also kind of, and I would say this applies to anybody, right? I would say this applies to whoever you submit to, is find a unique and interesting, like, okay, follow their guidelines, obviously, right? But if you can find like an interesting pairing that it's like this meets this, it's a gamble, but it pays off, right? Because I'm not a fan of Desperate Housewives, but I know what it's about, right? I know it's about women fighting and all that catty, like all that catty stuff. And so I'm like, okay, bringing that together, that's interesting, because her series is noirish, but who really reads noir? It's mostly men. But if you add a kind of drama aspect to it, that draws in women too. So I'm like, that's great. That's a cool pairing. All right, I think I've gushed over that enough. So
Paige, what kind of stories or authors are for you an instant no?
Oh, an instant no?
Yeah.
Well, for genre-wise, and we say it on the site, but I'm not into sci-fi or fantasy. Like we prefer dirty realism, which I say if you're going to have those elements, then I would put it through a realistic filter, like a dream or a hallucination or a psychotic break or something like that. I like to keep things grounded because I feel like a lot of writers, our first thing we write, at least with me or a lot of people I know, is fantasy. So it tends to kind of a lot of times be a less skilled writer, somebody more in the beginning, at least with what I've seen a lot or gets submitted to us versus, a bigger publisher.
You mentioned a genre that I'm sure many people are not familiar with. I'm trying to guess it myself. Dirty realism. How do you unpack that
Sebastian
style?
would probably do it better, but I just think kind of like Gritlit, just nothing fantastical happening and sort of doesn't necessarily have to be a nihilistic outlook, but just, really focusing on what usually goes hand in hand with an outcast life, which is a more brutal situation in their life or outlook.
Or just think of it like
sorry, Seb, let me just finalize here. Can you illustrate that with a couple of titles, let's say titles from the mainstream, just to people have an idea?
Well, right now I'm
Raymond Carver, Charles Bukowski, who write from like kind of like an everyday. It doesn't even have to be sort of like brutal. It's just like an everyday. You're talking about like everyday people, like in their like it can be as simple as like in everyday people and their everyday struggles and their everyday drama
like
and
Aaron's
whatever
stories too. Like I
yeah.
wouldn't say his stuff is necessarily dark, but it's also not hiding things. Like there's still like the cursing, the sex, the music.
Yeah.
Parts you might want to cover up normally.
Yeah, like sometimes it's called like Kmart lit or whatever, and it's just kind of it's how do I put it? It's trying to tell stories about people whose lives are probably not the kind of people that are going to read your stuff. Like a coal miner. What's the life of a coal miner? Like what is their daily struggles? What is the struggles of like a single mother who lives in a trailer park, right? So
but why is it called? Sorry, Seb. Why is it called dirty? That's what I cannot understand myself. Why do you guys call it dirty?
Well, we don't call it that. That's the name. I forget who coined it back in whatever. I think it's called dirty because it tends to not be given a kind of poetic flair. It's just laid out there. It's just you see all of the pimples and bruises and shit and piss all boom, right? It's just it is what it is.
Is it fair to say that it's on your face?
Yeah, it can be, sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. I'm just wondering because I had this chat with Aaron and Ned, like in terms of provocation, like in this current day and age with access to violent content as pornography, what's the room for writing like dirty stuff? Like how can we raise attention when there is so much dirty elements in all sorts of shapes and forms when it comes to art? Like how can we still write about those things when they are at access of our fingertips?
With Neda and Aaron in particular, I like the way they do it because it's kind of sweeter, or even if or more emotional. Especially we have another book by Neda coming out soon called Red Wings, and it's still. I mean, you wouldn't call it a romance exactly, though there are elements of that, and it's a first-person narrative, so there's just so much emotion and longing and things like that with the main character that's still kind of, I wouldn't say like well, there's also just like another character has a blood fetish, so it slowly works you into that kind of, and then finding the romance in the other sense with darker themes like that. Or with Aaron, when he has stories like that, like in the Slut Vomit book, he has a story about a lot lizard and a guy helping her out. Even though he's hoping she gets better, there's still the realism of him knowing she probably won't get better if I give her this money. She'll probably still go do drugs or things like that. But, it's the internal monologue inside that helps kind of sweeten it, at least for them.
Yeah. When you are reading the submissions, was there ever a time, Paige, that you thought, oh, damn, I wish I've written this?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, or just in a more broad way, I'm like, I wish I had thought of that concept. Like with Netta's stuff, a lot of times that comes up because I like the more feminine touch to all the violence.
How would you describe the feminine approach to violence? Because
there's usually a lot more. I would say we're harder to make that ticking time bomb go off, and then when we do, it's very passionate and usually from longing. A lot of times, not getting what you want from other people. Like romantically or from your family. A lot of times, even in an abstract, indirect way, having to do with love.
Is there a masculine angle, Sebastian? And is it something that you pursue?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I write violence in a very unique way, I think. And I don't want to come across as arrogant, but I feel as though a lot of people who write violence have never experienced it, because if you're writing it in a realistic way. Now, again, no shade if you want to go all gory and whatever, but for me, when I write violence, it's explosive and it's like a flash, right? It's like a one and done. Now, what do I mean by that? It means I'm not going to linger on the details of the event longer than is necessary. Human beings, here's an interesting thing. Like, human beings, we're pretty frail creatures. We're not really meant to fight, right? You look at a boxer, they have to have a whole bunch of shit put on them in order to box, right? And so it's very unnatural. And so when it happens, most people, they don't, unless you're a psychopath, you don't revel in the violence. It's something that is a necessity. I can give you some examples. Like, throughout my life, I have had bullies. And I'm sorry to say to a lot of people that think that you can just talk things out, I'm sorry, with a bully you can't. And there are moments when I busted a bully's nose, and it's quick. It's like one and done. It's and so that's my approach to writing violence. I think a lot of people who write violence, I get bored by it, because it's like, okay, and then the blood dripped down and it pooled, and it's like, okay, come on, man, let's keep it going, right? So for me, if I'm writing a scene, it's he walked in, shot the guy in the head, and maybe a description of blood ran down, and then he left, and it's it. It's explosive. And part of what inspired that was there's a really good movie based on a really good book called Drive, and there's violence in Drive, but that's also very explosive. And I suppose that's what I would say. Some of my stuff is extremely violent, but it doesn't linger on the violence. It doesn't. I don't do splatterpunk. It's just not my approach. So I don't know if there's like a masculine and feminine way of writing it. Although it's interesting what Paige said about, I suppose it takes like Paige, would you say that in order for like a woman to do something violent in general, would you say it takes a lot of like build up, like they have to be really pushed to the edge, and then when they finally get pushed to the edge, it's like boom,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Because of emotionally, I think we stifle a lot of things. Like, at least for me, I get so emotional that I clam up, and then I think that I shouldn't react this way. Or then the physical aspect of you would need a lot to pop off, because as a female, you're usually smaller, not as strong if you're going against a man. Or I feel like there's more second guessing. Like they say with scores or whatever, that women are more likely to second guess things.
Yeah.
So you think, Paige, the fact that women tend not to be that strong or not that tall, is that the reason why you ladies focus more on the psychological side of the violence?
Not always, but yeah, a decent amount. I think we just spend so much time in our heads in general. So.
And what about merging violence and sex? I think that is something that it's not everyone is ready to read or to digest. How do you go about merging those two elements?
I think a lot of people are more receptive than they think in smaller ways. Like a lot of the romance is that are popular now, there's usually a power dynamic, like, with vampires, or just forbidden romances, or with men that are very, very strong. Then there's like this skinny, pretty little girl that catches their eye. I think they like the rougher stuff. And then 50 Shades of Grey was popular, even though that's pretty light. That at least opened the door for a lot of people, I think, or at least the zeitgeist, or just stuff in media veering more towards that.
Yeah, sorry. Would you like to have been the publisher of 50 Shades of Grey, other than the commercial aspects, of course?
Yeah, because I would have helped her write it different. I read it. I didn't really like it, but I did like aspects of it. I like how she put in the contract in it. But I always thought, even when I was reading it, when it came out, I'm like, if I would have edited this, I would have put this somewhere else. And, I would have made more notes on the character to be more likable. Not that every character has to be likable, but I just feel like a lot of the also reason a lot of people don't like that book has to do with the way the character was introduced, when it could have been kind of different and realistic. It's funny because right before that came out, I was writing something similar but more dark. So I always feel like I'm always writing something a little ahead before it becomes popular, but I don't finish. And I mean, not that I obviously think I would have this success, but
yeah. And I guess because I had the same experience, I had a small publisher myself back when I lived in my home country, and I guess you guys, I wouldn't say you struggle, but you've been there when you want to focus on your writing, and you are trying not to be influenced by the stuff you need to read because you have professional duties. So how do you go about making sure that when you are writing, you are not being impacted by the stuff you need to read just because it's your profession?
What I do is I look for mediums outside of writing. Like I look at song lyrics a lot. Or right now I'm reading a lot of manga and comic books, so it's slightly different. Or from other cultures, a lot of Japanese stuff, things like that.
So is it fair to say that your advice would be to read something that is completely different from the stuff you are?
You could find a whole new way of looking at things that way and then incorporate it in your own way. I like to look at a lot of things and like scrapbook them together. They don't go together. Different mediums or different scenes.
I think that's a good way of approaching any artistic endeavor, just in general. It's so cliched advice, but it's good advice, which is to read widely. Read as much as you read. Yes, no. So this applies to like whatever your genre is. I would say especially if it's transgressive fiction, because transgressive fiction is more of a flavoring you add than a genre, I would say, right? Read westerns, read mysteries, read fantasy, read science fiction, read noir, read literary, read poems, right? And at a certain point, like it's impossible to like get away from your influences. It's just impossible, right? Me personally, I mean, I wear my influences on my sleeve, you know. It's undeniable, but it's what you do. It's are you trying to copy, or are you like, oh, this is how they did this, I want to not emulate it, but I want to take aspects of this and this and this, put it in a pot, put my own flavoring on it, and then you can see, oh, there's elements of Kafka in, here. Oh, there's elements of Dostoevsky, elements of Chuck Palahniuk, elements of Bukowski, elements of Raymond Carver, all these different elements you can see. And yeah, I mean, Paige mentioned like song lyrics. I mean, I would say for anybody who is writing, listen to how the really, really top tier lyrical rappers construct bars, because that will give you, just look at how they stack their rhymes. Even if you don't emulate them, which you probably shouldn't in a story, you'll see just how important at the sentence level, how you can pack so much in to one single sentence.
The references and word plays.
Yeah, the references, the word plays, the double, triple, sometimes quadruple entendres. So yeah, I guess that's what I would say to that.
So you already provided a lot of advice when it comes to writing. So let's pretend there's someone watching us, and they are seriously considering starting a press themselves. Let's say an indie press. So they know some people in the field, they have the skills, they believe they can make it happen, but they are not sure about the whole process because they haven't done it. So how do you encourage them to go ahead, Paige?
No. I mean, there was so much to cover, but in ways it's not as hard as you think. You have to be passionate. You have to pick the projects you really want to deal with. You have to kind of think of it as a brand. What do you want your brand to be to stand out? Like ours with the Outcast fiction. A lot of like our symbol, you can really see, is like a Jester hat.
Yeah.
So a lot of our things are darkly funny. Like we really like irony. And for actually getting set as a press, I think it's pretty easy now with like Kindle Direct Publishing or all the YouTube videos and influencers who tell you how to do it. I would say don't be afraid to use social media to make friends and promote each other and learn from each other. I think that's one of the best things about doing this.
So when you say a brand, is it about creating an identity and making sure that is well spread and people can relate to?
It's also for yourself to figure out what you really like and what makes you passionate and pin down that. And if you can pin down that for yourself, then you can pin down what you like about the stuff in others' work that you're going to be able to have the passion to promote more.
Yeah, and I think the identity thing is crucial for all sorts of endeavors. But I think that the challenge comes after a few years, because it's okay to be loyal to what you've been doing, but you need to evolve. So how about keeping your ethos, but also, let's say, incorporating new things? How do you go about renovating yourself?
I think it's usually a natural progression anyway. If you do something enough times, you're going to have new interests anyway, and you could find a way to blend them. It's a pretty open-ended question, so I'm not sure. But like with our anthologies, at first they were more horror-y, and now we're slowly leaning into, I don't know about more lighthearted, but definitely more humor than there was at first. Like that was always an element, but I think we're really expanding it lately with the newest Slut Vomit. A lot of the stories are funny, or they're even something I wouldn't normally consider. Like one of them is almost an article. So.
I mean, you can even take, okay, so take the symbol, right? The symbol is very
tragicomic.
No, I mean it's very, so the symbol is very deliberate. So what is a jester? Traditionally, the jester is the only person in the king's court who can mock him to his face without getting beheaded. But he's an outsider too, right? So that's deliberate in the sense of we kind of looking for. Well, a lot of the stuff is what can we mock? What can we, or what societal norms can we push against? And the jester is a humorous, but also a dark figure too. A lonely figure, but also he can be a tragic figure, but I don't know if I'm explaining this right. I think a lot of our stuff is unintentionally funny. At least for me, I've noticed that people have called my stuff sometimes funny, and I never try to be funny. I mean, I just, in my work, maybe it's because some of the lines are just so egregious or just so like out there, people can't help but laugh. What?
Or the situations.
Or that the situation is just so
outlandish.
Not even outlandish, but just so like extreme, right? Like you get to a point where it's like, how do I put this? Like, Paige, would you agree with this, that out of all of our writers, I probably write some of the more extreme?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I write the most extreme probably in terms of like, I think of like, and I don't say this as any kind of like badge of honor. It's just where my mind goes, like the most fucked up thing. That is where I just let the story take me.
Where humor a lot of time can be found in what's unexpected. And that's what we're looking for a lot of times, is unexpected things.
Yeah.
Voices, situations.
And I would say that that's also, I would say, what transgressive fiction does really, really well. Okay, I'm not going to say that other genres don't do this or can't do this, but if you're picking up a book, if you're picking up a transgressive fiction, either, novel, short story, whatever, you're in for a surprise. Usually, you don't know what to expect, because you're going to be taken on down a path that you may think is going one place and is going another. So, like, I'll give you an example. One of Chuck Palahniuk's most famous stories, and sorry, I'm going to spoil this, but it's still worth reading, is Guts. And it starts off very humorous about this kid who is doing just various explorations of inserting various things in his asshole, right? Maybe a carrot, maybe this, kind of toying with that. And it's kind of ha 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 ha. you get, and Chuck talks about this, and this is like a way of kind of getting the reader invested. And so what you think you're in for is a very humorous romp about a guy inserting objects in his asshole. But then it takes a dark turn because the guy's masturbating in a swimming pool, and there's a pool suction, and he ends up with an anal prolapse. And so the idea is for that is it's like, as Chuck said it, once you get to that point, you're already in. It's too late. He sucked you in with the humor. Now he's going to hit you with the tragedy or the whatever, you know? And that's what makes for, I would say, a really good transgressive fiction story, is you're in for a surprise. It's not formulaic. Yeah, sorry if I rambled a little bit too much.
No, that's no problem. Paige, from what I could see on the internet, you also write poetry.
Oh yeah.
The stuff I read, I found it visceral and raw, you know, which no issue for me. But I'm sure that you came across some funny comments, especially when you discuss your books with friends and relatives and so on. Was there any spicy interaction that you want to share with us? Any spicy reaction from others?
Oh no, I keep that stuff hidden. When I was 17, I wrote a book kind of like Lolita. So, and then I was so proud that I finished writing it that I showed my mom, and then she flipped out and then was horrified. So then I never showed my family stuff again. So yeah, I don't really share that, or also I'm just shy in general. So like people in my real life, even when I show them, I'm shy about it, and it's also awkward because how personal it could be. Or a lot of my poetry is part fiction because I think it's more interesting to blend like three memories up and put it into one. So the person who's reading it, it doesn't really sound like them. Like I'm not like specifically blaming them a lot of times for whatever happens in there, or if I'm writing a story, sometimes I will write a poem about it. So, but also use I in it. So, you know, sometimes it's just straight fiction. So the blending of the two, that could be awkward too. Like if somebody thinks I was on the run when I wasn't.
Yeah, but I think the challenge comes when people link us to the characters. As much as we say, yeah, this is not me. Yeah, it's not even an alter ego. You know, they will always tend to think that we are projecting our experiences.
I would say the emotions in mine are always true, though. Like I'm always trying to nail the feeling, even if I'm using fictional or blended up memories to do it. I do think it is fun that if strangers think certain things about me, though. Like one of my books, I was gonna have in the author picture, I was gonna put like a face tattoo on and hope that people believed it.
Yeah, and is it trickier for a female author, or do you think it's the same for men?
I think it's easier to get published. A lot of times, depending on what it is, because all the presses, they say that they want to amplify minority voices, even though now that's ironically the only thing they do. Even though being a woman is less so part of that group compared to like their gender identities or cultures or whatever. The hard part, if there was one, would be sometimes people talk down to me because they just assume that Sebastian is in charge of everything. And it's ironically always the people, always the men that are like white knighting on Twitter and things like that. You know, kind of like a priest who's always preaching about certain things and then does horrible things to their congregation.
Yeah, we had a guy, and I won't say who it is. We had a guy early on, and Paige knows exactly who I'm talking about once I reveal more. We had this real fuckhead who was let's just say he's very close to Chuck Palahniuk. He's kind of known, kind of well known. And I remember hitting him up for, when we were doing our first anthology, I hit him up for a story. Because I'm like, oh, cool, this is one of the bigger players in transgressive fiction. And he agreed. And it came time for editorial stuff. And Paige sent back some comments, right? And now keep in mind, this is a guy who's he's your typical check every box of like what the current social whatever is, like he believes all that, whatever it is, right? Like whatever is the in vogue political thing, he is on board with it, right? But yet when it came time to dealing with Paige, he couldn't be more condescending to her. And in terms of like, I used to, and it's like, and I didn't say this to him, but he kept giving his resume. I used to run these magazines and blah, 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 blah. And I wanted to say to him, yeah, but they fucking failed. Shut the fuck up. Why would I listen to somebody who ran 2 magazines that failed? Like, eat a fucking dick. So I can understand, like, I've seen, and Paige is right. I will readily admit, Paige does way more than I do. But for some reason, and that's why I try to give Paige as much credit as possible, but they just assume that I do everything. Paige does a lot. She does the formatting. She does the editing.
What do you do then? I don't know. We are
not a lot. Not a lot.
What do you do?
Not a lot. I'm going to be fucking honest. Not a lot. Like, I drop contracts. I promote. I network to the best of my ability.
He picks the stories sometimes where an author, he likes their vibe.
Yeah. I try to have an eye for, who I think will gel well with Paige and what I think will work, right? I try to feel people out. Because if somebody submits to us, I want to get a feel for their personality, that they're not going to be, that they're going to basically work well with Paige, because we're not at the point yet where this is like a full-time job for us. So like, we're not getting paid for this. So we don't need the stress of somebody who is just going to be a problem. Everybody's got problems in their lives. I don't want to put on Paige somebody who, and unfortunately there's been cases where that's happened, but I do my best to try to minimize that and be like, all right, I think this person is cool to work with. I think they're going to be okay. And, nothing's perfect, but I would like to think, Paige can confirm or deny that I've done hopefully a mostly good job of that.
Yeah, talking of something that can be both problem and the perk, AI. So what are your thoughts, Paige, when it comes to writing, editing, and publishing in the
I know it's a very black sheep
of AI?
I know it's a very black sheep opinion, but I don't care. If people are sending us stuff with AI, we would probably know anyway, because a lot of AI still is very PC, so it just wouldn't be a fit for us anyway. I think AI, when you use it like a search engine, is better if you use the right one, for learning about grammar rules and things like that, or about settings, fact checking, little things like that, and you could double fact check it elsewhere. I think it's a much funner tool than people give it credit for. Like, writers especially just lump it into this one box, like it's only for completely writing a story, when most of the AIs that I've seen cannot even do that. They will just give you like a back summary blurb. I think of it like a toy. I think it's fun if you're doing like fan fiction or something. That's not hurting anybody. You're having fun. Or like humorous stories just for fun. I've seen a lot of podcasts do it where they make like a fan fiction about, the guests and stuff. That's fun. And nobody's going to write that anyway. So
let's say we have a flash fiction contest and someone submit a piece written with AI. How can you identify it was done via ChatGPT or Grok or one of those?
Well, with certain ones, since I've used them before, I know that there are certain phrases that they always use, like a really specific phrasing. Especially in like if it's a romantic piece, they always use the same phrases. I would pick that up, or just.
Can you give us an example of those phrases? If you remember, if not, go.
I mean, they're usually like 30 phrases, honestly, but many people use AI for that. But I mean, you're not allowed to even imply a lot of non-PC stuff, so it wouldn't really fit with our genre. And we wouldn't host a flash fiction contest anyway. I don't think we would do flash.
Yeah.
But
Any thoughts on that, Sebi?
But I mean, I would echo Paige that I think it's like maybe this is just like a natural contrarian in me where I'm not the hugest fan of AI, but when I saw like when there's all this backlash and people become fucking annoying about it when they're just like how do I put it? Like back when I was on Twitter before I deleted it because it became worse than what it already was. All I would hear from writers that I would see on there every fucking day for a year was how bad AI was. And I'm just like, Christ, like get on something new. Like if you're that insecure about your writing, here's the thing. If you're a good writer, AI is not going to replace you because AI writes like dog shit. If you don't have a unique voice, so you do need to be scared if you're a writer and you suck at it, because then AI can replace you. It can't replace Paige. It just won't, because she's got a unique voice. I mean, maybe sometime in the future, but as of right now, it can't. So, but all these people bitching about it, I've read some of their works. It's milquetoast. It's fucking boring. It's got no life, no substance. It's soulless.
Seb, sorry to cut you off. Is it fair to say that AI can replace the mediocrity?
Oh, absolutely. Of course. I mean, it can absolutely can replace the mediocrity. However, I think what it's good for, that I think that a lot of people don't understand, is it's great for brainstorming. It is really good for being like, hey, let me explore this character, or give me a character that's like this, and it can kind of give you like, you can kind of play around with that. I know, Paige has done that. I've done that. It's also good for being like, hey, give me an outline, right? But I don't think, I mean, maybe I'm naive, but I don't think many people are using it to write like full, creative works in it. Maybe I'm just naive, but...
And if they are, it's going to be for genre fiction, because that sells better. It's going to be like romance usually. I think I have read a few romances that seem to have used it, which I don't really care anyway, because it's cheap and trashy like junk food anyway. So.
Yeah.
Just to finalize for the last 5 minutes, how do you foresee Outcast Press in the next, say, I don't like think of 5 years, maybe 2 or 3 Paige?
Still going. Maybe not as many books a year as we're finding. We like to spend more time on them. I'd like to have a slightly better quality of my editing, or us fine-tuning illustrations and things like that, or working with Cody on cover art. I'd still like to do more anthologies. One of the next ones I want to do is a Liminal Spaces anthology. That would go hand in hand with more sci-fi elements, but again, I would want to keep it more realistic. Like if there's going to be those elements, make it like nightmares or hallucinations or drug trips, things like that. I'd like to still be going. This is something that gives me a lot of purpose, and a lot of very, very good friends. So I don't see it going away, even if it diminishes.
Yeah, you touch base on something that I think it's not known for those who are not in the field as we are. One of the main perks of doing these things is the connections we create along the way. Like if you are not in the mix, you will never be in touch with individuals that we came across just for doing this. And it's I think it's a great benefit, and we should be very grateful for it. And especially in the current day and age that we have these tools, the technology, and all that, it's a privilege, I would say.
Very much so, yeah. Yeah, very much so.
In terms of your work as an author, would you let us know what are you working on at the moment? Maybe Sebastian, you can start on this.
Yeah, so I have many things in the fire right now. So I've got a literary post-apocalyptic novella that's going to be coming out pretty soon. Kind of think a mix between like Cormac McCarthy meets Thomas Ligotti meets Russ Cole from True Detective. That I'm also working on a collection of short stories of Kafkaesque horror. I've got another collection of short stories I'm working on of cosmic horror. And then sometime soon, I'm hoping I get back the edits for a short story collection called Flesh Merchants, which is stories of sex and death. It's 15 stories about the intersection of sex and death. Most of those stories have been published elsewhere, but there's 2 that are new, and it's all combined there. So I should be getting that, I'm hoping soon. But yeah, those are my next projects on the horizon.
Yeah, that's quite a lot. What about you, Paige? Anything in the pipeline that you would like to pre-announce?
I'm always working on short stories, and my cat's whining. Me and Sebastian are thinking of doing a Flesh Merchants 2 together, where like every other story will be one of ours. And then I've already written a little novella that will go in it. I've already written a small version of that's in Double Dealer magazine, the 14th edition. So all my stories are usually about these characters that I'm going to make novellas out of. And I've got 60% done with each of those, but I tend to get 60% done with all my projects and then move on to the next one. But making them into short stories that are different is helping me. Like I'm always submitting to journals. I'm always in the Troublemaker Fire Starter issues. I was in volume 666. And
they like really like your work. I've noticed they really like your work.
I sent a proof today for their next issue. I'm going to be in there with another short story about the character I always write about, Olive Eyes.
I was going to say, is it Olive Eyes? Because you like that character a lot.
Yeah, I like to give my characters nicknames. He's like a geeky, dorky drug dealer who's paying for medical school by selling drugs. So he will be in there and in the novellas that I write, with Sebastian or otherwise.
Bonus question for you, Paige. It just came to my mind as you were speaking. Let's say you are working on a piece that you are, let's say, at 70%, and then you have a new idea, and you are very excited about this new idea, but you need to turn a blind eye to that new idea, otherwise you won't finish what you have been working on for the last, 9 months. How would you discipline yourself to finalize what you have started?
Oh, I'm bad at that. I would try to think of a way to combine the two, like even if I had to just spit out a short story that combines them, two somehow, like somehow kind of crossover, I guess I would do that, because then it could re-energize me about the old project too. And then I would hopefully make points in the story that would also mean I wouldn't forget about the points I want to make in the other two. Because I'm forgetful.
Well, we all have our own faults and flaws. That's fine. That's fine, guys. I want to just thank you very much for the insights. I think we all learned a lot about not only writing but the the behind the scenes of a publishing house. I think it's not as complex as people think, especially when they listen to someone who is doing in the 21st century. And I think you guys know the stuff, and there is more to come in the next couple of years. So I want to wish you best of luck, and hope you remain active and spreading your work all over the world as you do. So thank you very much, Paige and Sebastian.
Thank you much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So guys, just for the viewers, if you enjoyed this conversation, there are three buttons below: subscribe, like, and share. I'll be very grateful if you can do that. And for this week, we have other two shows. We're going to be discussing free speech on Wednesday with Marco and a couple of guests. And first, we're going to discuss football. So if you are into that, stay around. It will be a bit early to be at 7 p.m. UK time. So I hope to see you there. Well, have a good evening, guys, and take care. Bye.
Take it easy, man.